They tell you debt is a weakness, a burden, a chain around your future. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The most powerful players on earth don't avoid debt. They manufacture it, they weaponize it, and then they rule through it. Not by accident, by design. Because debt, when structured the right way, doesn't make you poor. It makes you untouchable. And once you see the mechanism, you can't unsee it. Think about this for a second. The United States is over $34 trillion in debt. Japan's debt is more than 250% of its GDP. Major corporations borrow billions, even when they're sitting on piles of cash. If debt is so dangerous, why do the most powerful institutions on the planet drown themselves in it? Why hasn't the system collapsed? Why does it keep rewarding the biggest borrowers? That's the paradox. And the answer is not complicated. It's just hidden behind boring words and bad metaphors. Let's strip it down. Debt is usually framed as a personal mistake. A credit card bill, a student loan, a mortgage you regret. In that world, debt equals stress. Interest equals punishment. And paying it off equals freedom. That logic works for individuals. But power doesn't operate at the individual level. It operates at the system level. And at the system level, debt does something very different. It creates dependence. Imagine two people. Person A has no debt. Person B owes you money every month. Who thinks about who more often? Who has leverage? Debt is a relationship, not a number. And whoever controls the terms of that relationship controls the future. That's the first crack in the story. Now zoom out. When a government issues debt, it doesn't borrow the way you do. It creates an asset that other people need to hold. Banks need it for collateral. Pension funds need it for stability. Central banks need it for reserves. Government debt becomes the backbone of the financial system. So when a country like the US issues treasury bonds, it's not begging for money. It's offering oxygen. And once the world builds its financial lungs around that oxygen, you can't just take it away. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. The more essential your debt becomes to the system, the harder it is for anyone to let you fail. Failure would break everything. So instead of debt weakening you, it creates a silent shield, a too big to fail halo. Not because you're virtuous, but because you're dangerous to remove. This isn't theory. We've seen it happen. 2008, banks loaded themselves with leverage. Complex debt stacked on top of more debt. It looked reckless. It was reckless. But when it blew up, did the system punish them? No, the system rescued them. Because their debt had become structural. Their collapse would have dragged everyone down with them. Debt turned into power the moment it became systemically necessary. And the same logic applies to nations. If your debt is small and irrelevant, defaulting destroys you. If your debt is massive and foundational, defaulting destroys everyone else. Guess who gets better terms? Now let's talk about the part nobody likes to admit. Inflation. Inflation quietly rewrites debt contracts. When prices rise, the real value of debt falls. You borrow in strong dollars. You repay in weaker dollars. Time does the dirty work for you. This is why governments with their own currencies fear inflation less than individuals do. For them, moderate inflation is not a bug. It's a pressure valve. Debt shrinks without anyone voting on it. No press conference. No apology. Just math. And here's the irony. The same system that tells ordinary people to fear inflation relies on inflation to stay alive. Savers lose purchasing power. Debtors gain flexibility. Guess who sits on the biggest debts? But debt alone isn't enough. The real power comes from who owns the currency. If you borrow in a currency you control, you can always create more of it. If you borrow in a currency you don't control, you're trapped. This is why emerging markets blow up in crises and reserve currency nations don't. Same debt, different rules. Debt plus monetary control equals leverage. Debt without control equals vulnerability. This is where the mechanism fully reveals itself. Step 1. Issue debt that the system depends on. Step 2. Ensure your currency is the settlement layer for global trade. Step 3. Allow inflation and growth to slowly erode the real burden. Step 4. Use your debt as collateral for influence, alliances, and power. At no point do you need to pay it off. You just need to roll it forward. Forever. Now contrast that with the popular narrative. You hear phrases like maxed out credit card or living beyond our means. These metaphors are emotionally powerful. They're also misleading. A sovereign balance sheet is not a household budget. A country that controls the global reserve currency is not playing the same game as you. When pundits say the debt will destroy us, they're often projecting personal finance logic onto geopolitical machinery. It sounds responsible. It just isn't accurate. Does that mean debt doesn't matter? No. It means how it's structured matters more than how big it is. Debt becomes dangerous when confidence collapses, when lenders doubt repayment, when alternatives exist. Powerful debt survives because there is nowhere else to go. Look at global crises. Every time fear spikes, money doesn't flee U.S. debt. It floods into it, even when America is the source of the crisis. That's not trust. That's dependency. And dependency is power. Now let's zoom out one more layer. Debt doesn't just shape economics. It shapes behavior. Countries that owe you align with you. Institutions that rely on your bonds defend your system. Markets that clear in your currency obey your rules. This is how financial power replaces military power. No tanks, no invasions, just spreadsheets and settlement systems. But here's the catch. This mechanism only works while belief holds. Debt-based power is quiet, invisible, and psychological. It depends on trust, on habit, on inertia. Once enough people seriously question the system, once alternatives gain traction, once confidence cracks, debt flips from shield to weapon against the issuer. History is full of examples. Reserve currencies don't last forever. They fade slowly, then suddenly, not because of one bad decision, but because the system that needed them stops needing them. That's when debt stops being power and starts being gravity. So here's the uncomfortable ending. We don't live in a world where debt is simply good or bad. We live in a world where debt is hierarchy. The closer you are to the top, the more debt works in your favor. The further down you go, the heavier it gets. Same instrument, different outcomes. Which raises the final question. If debt is power for those who control the system and a trap for those who don't, what happens when the system itself begins to fracture? And who, exactly, will be holding the debt when that moment arrives?